I was born with the gift of the gab. With MagMongoSlade. Shoot. We don't miss.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Now, you may have seen a lot of people on Twitter very upset with Booker T. I am here to talk about that today. So, first, we got to talk about what actually happened. So, Booker T has been under fire on Twitter for firing a female wrestler by the name of Rachel Rose. Now, why did he fire her? Well, she claimed she was fired during an incident where she was being stalked by a male wrestler. Booker T says he stopped working with her because she didn't listen to him when she went to a bar where this man was and started a confrontation. So all of this comes out in Fightful. So Fightful is apparently talking to Rachel Rose and talking to all of these people. And they start rolling out a story over the weekend. It will be the weekend of February the 10th, maybe the 11th. But over that weekend, this story starts to come out. So what actually occurred? Well, there was a guy by the name of Sean Reed. Sean Reed was one of the students at Reality of Wrestling. All of the information that I've seen, which includes statements from Rachel Rose, statements from one of the former head trainers of Reality of Wrestling, Booker T himself, and others, noted that Sean Reed was removed from Reality of Wrestling's roster in 2020. The reason? Because of his attendance. That's what it was said in terms from Sean Reed himself, who spoke about it on Facebook. So Sean Reed is removed from the school for attendance reasons. But he and Rachel Rose had trained at the same gym, according to him, for 3 years, from 2018 to about 2020, 2021 or something like that. When there became an issue between Sean Reed and Rachel Rose. Now, the issue is that Rachel Rose and this guy, they weren't dating. He claims that he was flirting with her because they had similarities in their characters. She says she had a long-term boyfriend. She was not interested in this guy. And whatever happened, the guy had to be removed from the situation because apparently he did not get the point when she didn't want to do anything to do with him. At this point, Rachel Rose actually works at another place called Premier Wrestling or something to that effect. The guy who is kicking out Sean Reed, his name is Kevin Bernhardt, I think. He's one of the officials at Reality of Wrestling. He tells him you can't be here anymore. You have to go over to Premier, I guess. He's just kind of giving them an idea of where to go. Turns out Rachel Rose works there as well, and there's another issue. Rachel Rose also gets him kicked out of Premier because she's saying he's stalking her, and he made some threats when he was there. He also made some threats when he was kicked out of Reality of Wrestling. So apparently he tried to come back to Reality of Wrestling. He was once again rebuffed because, again, Rachel Rose still works there. Apparently she is trying to get a restraining order on this guy. There's police reports, all the kind of stuff that you would usually do if somebody is stalking you. So she's actually doing the right thing here. She's trying to get this guy taken off the street. So he is told not to contact her. He is also told he cannot come back to the Reality of Wrestling property. He does both of these things. He continues to send Rachel Rose emails, and he shows up at the Reality of Wrestling venue. Now, Booker T doesn't know about any of this stuff, according to Booker T. Now, we get to December 2022. The guy has been kicked out of the school for 2 years at this point. And there's an incident. Sean Reed shows up to the Reality of Wrestling venue. He is once again kicked out of the venue and told he cannot be there. He runs into Booker T in the parking lot. Booker T doesn't know anything about this guy being banned, doesn't know about the situation about this guy stalking this girl, doesn't know that much about this situation at all, but he knows the kid. So the kid tells him he's not interested in the girl anymore. He just wants to get back into wrestling because he was a big wrestling fan. Booker T feels a little bit of sympathy for him, gives him a seat at the show because the kid asked to see the show. Booker T lets the kid sit at the show. Apparently, Booker T and Rachel Rose have a conversation in which she then informs Booker T that this guy has been stalking her. This guy is a problem. At this point, Booker T tells her, okay, there's a hangout spot right next door to the Reality of Wrestling venue. I think it's called the Stud something Garden. It's a bar of a tavern. All right. And Booker T says, all right, he was a former student here. He's probably going to show up at that tavern, that bar. Don't go. Please don't go. Now, again, he's just making a suggestion that she doesn't go. Sean Reed, the stalker, goes to the tavern. Instead of listening to Booker T, Rachel Rose goes to the tavern. She goes there with other people. Now, some people say that, well, everybody agrees that Sean Reed was already there. Sean Reed said it. Witnesses have said it. Other people have said it. He was already there when she showed up. Instead of leaving, as Booker T asked her to do, she decided she was going to demand that he leaves the venue. He was already there. He was already eating. He said he's not leaving. She turns around, goes back, and gets other people. Now, witnesses and all this kind of stuff differ in terms that some people, this guy says that there were 7 wrestlers surrounding him. I think another witness said there was a bunch of other people. There might have been 3 or 4, but there was more than just one. And they were all demanding that he leaves, calling them names, basically, surrounding him. The guy admits, and other witnesses admit, that at this point, the guy gets frustrated. He grabs a glass mug, smashes it into somebody's face. At this point, the fight has started. He then, according to Rachel Rose, he smashed a glass mug over somebody's face. That person had to go to the hospital. He then lunged after her. She was not touched or harmed. The police arrests Sean Reed. The police arrests the other guy. The other guy goes to the hospital. And Booker T fires Rachel Rose. But he technically says he doesn't fire people because he technically doesn't hire them because they're independent contractors. That's his point of view. So this is why Rachel Rose was fired. Instead of avoiding Sean Reed, she instead instigated a fight with Sean Reed at the bar. Now, according to some witnesses, the bar's owner is friends with Booker T because the school and the tavern are in close proximity. All right. So Booker T gets a call that his students are fighting in a bar. He has to leave his home, come back to see what's going on, to find out that one of his students is in the hospital because this girl started a fight in the bar. Now, I swear to Jesus, women are absolutely allergic to accountability. I think her lips would swell up if you told her that she was responsible for all of this. So she goes, of course, she waits 2 years. And then all of a sudden, she starts telling Fightful she was fired because she complained about being stalked. And that is not what occurred. Everybody pretty much agrees about what occurred. You were told to stay away from that venue because that guy was probably going to be there. You could say, well, Booker T can't tell her what to do, and he cannot. And maybe he was wrong for even saying that. But that would be common sense that if the guy was stalking you, you wouldn't want to be around him. You don't get to go around and say, well, we're going to get together and force him to leave. Not really. Now, I did give you the abbreviated version of this. This is a very, very long document from Fightful. It's also a very long comment from Sean Reed. And Booker T spent a lot of time on his podcast talking about this. So I gave you the condensed version. Sean Reed believes that Rachel Rose is a member of some kind of clique and that, basically she was using politics to get him banned from arenas. And she believes that he was a crazy stalker telling people that they were dating. all this kind of stuff. The guy is clearly unhinged just from looking at his comments on social media with no punctuation, completely tangential. He admitted to making threats. You know, he says that he's a hothead and all this kind of stuff. He's clearly not all the way there. She did the right thing, having gone to the police multiple times about this guy, including calling the police on this guy multiple times. So at least that part we know is facts. There's paperwork. Booker T had paperwork. She's got paperwork. Fightful has paperwork. There's police records of this guy being arrested. There's police records of this guy being told he's not allowed on the Reality of Wrestling property. There's records of him being told that he cannot contact her, and he sent her an email anyway. All this kind of stuff. So let's talk about this email real quick. So Fightful gets the police report from when Rachel Rose calls the police about this guy continuing to contact her, and she's telling the police what's going on. So when she talks to the police officer, she gives the police officer the entire timeline that the two of them met in 2018. Sean Reed started telling people that they were dating. She denied it, said she had a boyfriend, said that Sean Reed started acting weird, and he ended up leaving the gym where they trained. And then, you know, other things happened where she had to get him kicked out of Reality of Wrestling. Then she had to get him kicked out of the other place. And then he shows up at these various places where she's performing, like Premiere, like Reality of Wrestling and stuff like that, even though he's not supposed to be there. And then the fight happens at the tavern. So then she calls the police, and she tells the police officer that he sent her an email where he admitted that his presence make her uncomfortable, which, you know, she feels is an intimidation, that this guy's trying to intimidate her by saying, I know you're scared of me. I know that you're worried about me or whatever. The police officer gets the email from Rachel Rose, and he says, after reading it, that it seemed more like an apology. Like the guy was apologizing that about this whole thing and was trying to put it behind him, which is mirrored in his comment on Facebook when he's going through this completely tangential thing. He was talking about maybe trying to put this behind him and moving on, and how he doesn't want to get back into Reality of Wrestling anymore just to save Booker T the headache, but he doesn't want to quit wrestling. But a lot of people are just not going to book this guy anymore because he's obviously a psycho. But what makes it even crazier is the guy admitted to carrying a gun. Now, this is where the issue really kind of hits the head, because Sean Reed, in his statement on Facebook, said that he brought a gun to the Reality of Wrestling venue, but he said he brought it to the venue the day he was let go, which was in 2020. Everybody who is looking at and reading this article, and they're very mad at Booker T because Booker T said there was no gun. But again, Booker T didn't know about this situation in 2020. Somebody else handled it. Somebody else fired the kid and kicked him out of Reality of Wrestling, not Booker T. All right? The day Booker T ran into him, which would have been December 2022, Booker T said he didn't have a gun. So Booker T is talking about when he met the kid in the parking lot, the kid did not have a gun. But everybody is talking like Booker T knew he had a gun and let him into the venue anyway. And he doesn't care about the female talent and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's ridiculous. They clearly did. If you're going to believe what he said in terms of that he was carrying a gun the day he was let go, that was in 2020. He didn't say he was carrying a gun that day. So, and I would have no reason to think that Booker T is lying about the guy not having a gun. I don't think Booker T will let somebody who has a gun on his property. I don't think that would happen. All right. It's just common sense. Now, Booker T can be blamed for a lot. He was apparently not paying attention to, you know, the comings and goings of his students, but that's actually a good thing because he's not micromanaging their lives. He's saying to them, you know, you're adults. You have to go, you have responsibilities, but he also has underage talent. You know, there's a girl there that was wrestling. She's like 16 or something. So you do have to make sure that everybody there is being as mature as possible. So now another incident occurs. Well, I wouldn't even say it's another incident. But there's another issue which is occurring. One of the witnesses who spoke to Fightful after the original story went up noted that a lot of the wrestlers who were rah-rahing over around Rachel Rose on Twitter were guys who wrestled for a place called New Texas Pro Wrestling. And this guy believes that this is in response to Booker T a couple of weeks prior to this article coming out, saying to his talent that he did not want them working other independent wrestling shows. So, and when you look at a recent New Texas Pro Wrestling card, Rachel Rose is on there. Hyann, who used to work in Reality of Wrestling, is there. A guy by the name of JJ Blake, who used to be one of the coaches at Reality of Wrestling. He is a big, I was about to call him a SJW on Twitter in terms of believe all women, believe victims. That's his whole thing here. He works at New Texas. They're really bigging this thing up. Those people are the folks that are really blowing this thing up. And they all happen to work in this same place. And the guy who owns New Texas used to work at Reality of Wrestling. So the owner works there. One of the coaches works there. A couple of the talent works there. And then you find out that there were talent that quit Reality of Wrestling after this incident. So there were people who was working in Reality of Wrestling after Rachel Rose was fired. Some people quit. So when Sean Reed says there's a clique, it sounds conspiratorial, and he is a little bit nutty. So you tend not to believe it. But within another witness says, isn't it funny how so many of these people happen to go work in New Texas? And then, you hear that Booker T is saying, well, we don't really want you guys working for other places while you're working in Reality of Wrestling. For whatever reason, rightly or wrongly. I'm not saying it's a good thing or it's not a good thing, but it's a statement that Booker T is making. And perhaps this is retaliation for that. So everybody is upset. A lot of people are upset. I'm not going to go and read these documents word for word. It's entirely too much stuff in order for me to read. All right. But just know, Sean Reed is a stalker. He's a little bit nutty. Rachel Rose was being stalked. She did call the police, but she also is very responsible for somebody getting arrested, and it was completely unnecessary, because if she'd have stayed away from the bar upon seeing that guy, none of this would have occurred. Booker T, miscommunication on his part. He didn't understand what was going on. He was being sympathetic to the young man, not knowing the situation. And then once he did find out, he tried to rectify it as best he could. The kid had already been kicked out of the school, so he wasn't supposed to be there. And they had done, in Booker T's mind, all that they could do in this situation. He even says it on his podcast, says it's not a Reality of Wrestling issue anymore. It's a police issue. We've already kicked him out of the program. He's not our student anymore. He's not our problem anymore. There's a lot of people trying to blame Booker T for what happened here. For starters, it did not happen on Reality of Wrestling property. So I don't understand why Booker T is under the microscope. Nothing happened. Something happened because Reality of Wrestling wrestlers went to a bar, and by all pretty much stories, they went and antagonized this guy. And you can say, well, and Booker T mentioned it, like there was a tradition that they would all go to this bar after the show, and he knew that because he used to be there. So he figured they would come to the show, and maybe he'd be there first. Okay, that's a typical stalker thing to do, that you would show up first and then you would wait for the person to come in. But once you guys make eye contact or whatever, she has to think about her own safety. It's not safe for her to be in the same venue with this guy. She doesn't want to be in the same venue with this guy. Why would she then turn around and confront him? That doesn't make sense. So then all the people who are miscommunicating about when this guy had this gun, if you truly believe that you were in danger, why would you confront him? Knowing that he's dangerous. He's made threats before. His threats were He was going to beat up the people at the premier gym. He was going to do all kinds of things to other people at other gyms. He just, again, he's clearly nutty. She's not a person where she's lying about this guy stalking her. Clearly, there was something there. There was some paperwork there. There were some decrees and orders put on him. All kinds of stuff. But you can't deny Booker T did all he could do. Maybe the other guy, the Kevin Bernhardt guy, who was the guy who both knew about the stalking incident, and he was the guy who fired Sean Reed in the first place from Reality of Wrestling. But he never told Booker T about any of this stuff. Maybe that guy is the problem. Other people may have kind of pointed out that that guy is the problem. And that guy hasn't spoken or said anything. Apparently he's just he still works there. So he hasn't really been a part of this story. Rachel Rose on Twitter claimed that this is about believing victims and making women feel safe, that she wants Reality of Wrestling to have better procedures and protections, and says that this has nothing to do with wrestling politics. The owner of New Texas is disgusted, and he's talking about how he doesn't want his organization mixed up with any of this stuff, which is, sensible. But it's an interesting tale that one of his coaches is taking shots at Reality of Wrestling about this. So JJ Blake, who was one of the trainers who used to work as a coach in Reality of Wrestling, he's on his Twitter accounts during this whole shabazzle talking about how Reality of Wrestling has problems growing their own talent and has since 2020. And that Reality of Wrestling doesn't really train anybody. They kind of outsource and then they take credit. And he's going on and on about how, this is not about outside agitators or antagonists trying to take down Reality of Wrestling. We share a lot of talent, which is true. There's been almost everybody that you can think of that used to work at Reality of Wrestling, like Roxy, who was Roxanne Perez in NXT, like Brian Keith, who was in AEW. They worked in both New Texas and Reality of Wrestling. It seems to be a thing where they kind of had talent going back and forth. But if the statement of Booker T saying he did not want talent working other independents, well, that means he doesn't want them working for New Texas, right? And if there was an exodus of talent that left Reality of Wrestling and went to New Texas, and now that's their place, like Hyann and Rachel Rose, and they're openly on Twitter saying, oh, this is the best school I've ever been to. JJ Blake is the best trainer I've ever had. All this sort of stuff, right? And it's very suspicious. That's all I'm saying. I ain't saying it's true. I'm saying it's very suspicious. So when one of the witnesses says, hey, this New Texas school, they're trying to take down Reality of Wrestling, and they're trying to basically piggyback off the Vince McMahon stuff in order to attack Booker T, you have to try to figure out what Booker T actually did wrong in this scenario when he admits he didn't know what was going on. The only thing he really did wrong, I guess you could say, was letting the kid in the venue and letting the kid watch the show. But at the time, if he didn't know that the kid was a stalker, then I can see why he would do that. One of the witnesses says that, Booker T is a guy who's been in and out of jail. He's been in trouble. He believes in second chances. He was considering it, considering letting the guy come back because he didn't know what was going on. Booker T continuously said in his show he didn't know what was going on. And if he had known, it would have went a little bit differently. But his main focus was, I specifically kept asking her not to go to that bar because everybody knew he was going to be there, or at least they figured he was going to be there. It was a good chance that he would be there. She said it. The witnesses said it. Booker T said it. And she went anyway. And even upon going, the fight only started because she started it. So everybody is trying to take accountability. This Sean Reed guy, who is a nut job, he's taking responsibility by saying, hey, I got kicked out of school for attendance issues, and I made some threats, and there was stuff that I should not have done. Booker T is saying, look, maybe I should have been paying closer attention. Maybe I should have asked more questions. I should have been more involved or whatever. I didn't have I didn't have much more information. The guy got kicked out of the school. I thought the situation was handled. He wants a second chance. I was considering it, but I didn't know that he had been kicked out of other places. There was all this paperwork on him and all this kind of stuff. The only person in this scenario who is not taking responsibility at all for their own behavior is the girl. It's like, oh, well, you don't want to victim blame. It's like, it's not victim blaming. Everybody else is taking responsibility for their part in this story. Why isn't she? If she was so scared, why didn't she just leave the venue when she had the chance? Well, other people are saying, and there's a lot of people who are doing this, she shouldn't have had to. Well, is this guy supposed to leave the fucking planet? Where's he going to go? He can't go anywhere because she might show up. At some point, she has to remove herself. If she had, I don't know how many people with her, even if the numbers have ranged from 2 to 7 people that was with her. We don't know. I don't know how many people were with her in that scenario. It doesn't matter anyway. She had no business confronting the guy. It doesn't matter who the guy is. You don't confront him because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if he's armed. You don't know if you think he's crazy, you certainly shouldn't have approached him aggressively and caused this issue. She doesn't see anything wrong with her behavior. A bunch of simps on white knights online, they don't see anything wrong with her behavior. I'm the only person sitting here saying, and maybe a couple of other people who are thinking to themselves, this all could have been completely avoided if she'd have left the tavern, or at least went and sat in the car until this guy got out and left. All of this could have been avoided, which is practical, sensible. You try to avoid confrontations. You don't go out there and create them. She then got mad and said that Booker T yelled and screamed at her, yelled at her face. Booker T said that it was over the phone, that they were amicably agreed to not do business. He refused to say that he fired her because he doesn't like to use that language. They're independent contractors. She said she was fired. She also said she was yelled at. One of the witnesses says that is why she was fired, or basically kicked out of Reality of Wrestling, and said that Booker T can be rough on students, but he was tough but fair, or basically harsh but fair. Then, of course, once this story comes out, there's a bunch of people saying, oh, yeah, there's 100 stories of Booker T getting mad and firing people for no reason, just to kind of tarnish his reputation. And I say I failed to see what Booker T was supposed to do wrong here. He is not responsible for this guy. If the guy is not on his property anymore, and you're not on his property anymore, you two got into a private conflict off of his venue. What can he do about it? He can't do anything about this. So only thing he can say is, I asked you not to do this. One of my students got injured and went to jail fighting on your behalf. Now that poor sucker, we don't even know what his name is. And I guarantee you it's a man. We don't even know what his name is. We don't know what the extent of his injuries were. We just know that Booker T said he got bonded out really quickly. So he didn't spend that much time in jail, but he got into a bar fight. All right. And the bar owner was pretty pissed because they did damage to the bar. And this thing it was completely avoidable. And that's really what so many people are missing. Yes, it's about this guy stalking her. Yes, she was trying to get him arrested. She was doing all this stuff. But just because all of that failed, that's not Booker T's fault. Right? If Booker T didn't know anything about it, that's Booker T's fault, because he should have known. Somebody should have told him. Absolutely, that Kevin Bernhardt guy, or whatever his name is, I think his name is Bernhardt, should have told Booker T about this scenario so that he would be aware of the potential dangers. Booker T says that they have cameras and that they have armed security, and they've had it for a while. So the idea that she's talking about how they don't have armed security and cameras and all this kind of stuff is false from his perspective. It's false, but we don't know when he got this stuff. It could have been recent. It could have been, Again, this situation happened in 2022, which he is also saying, like, why are we talking about this now? This thing is over a year old. Almost everybody is like, well, why are we talking about this now? Like, this is a long time ago. I thought we moved on. So the reason why we're talking about this now is because now she feels comfortable doing this. She claims that before she was concerned about retaliation, so she didn't feel like sharing the story because she feared retaliation from Sean Reed, which apparently she no longer feels retaliation from Sean Reed. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But the interesting bit here is people are mad at Booker T because they think he purposefully doesn't care about the female talent and that he fired this chick for being problematic or whatever, when in reality he fired her because she caused injuries and an arrest and a fight in a bar next door to his venue, pissed off his friend who owns the bar, and because she was not listening to him. All right. Now, she doesn't have to listen to him. I mean, let's just be fair. She doesn't have to do anything Booker T wants her to do. But that comes with consequences, because that's good, solid advice. It's good, solid advice to stay away from somebody that you claim that you're scared of. Not to go and click up with people and then try to attack him in the bar, or at least make him feel attacked at the bar. So there it is. That's why people are very angry at Booker T online. They feel he didn't do enough to protect this girl, even though the guy was banned from the arena 2 years prior, even though, she had him banned from another arena, kicked out of that place too. She had all kind of restraining orders on this guy. Booker T had no idea of knowing this. The only thing he did that was a mistake was bringing the kid back into the venue after he had been kicked out, which was a mistake on Booker T's part, but it's an honest mistake if he didn't know the danger that this kid had supposedly posed in that situation. The kid did not bring a gun the day that the fight happened. He said he had a gun the day he was let go, which would have been in 2022. So that's not true. At least from his perspective, it's not true. Maybe he made some threats the day he was kicked out, and told not to come back, and then Booker T let him back in. Maybe he made some threats that day. But again, Booker T didn't know that. All right. The Bernhardt guy is probably the most to blame here in terms of the guy still being around, because Booker T didn't know. And the Bernhardt guy did know, and he apparently didn't tell Booker T. Rachel Rose is at fault only for the point of view that she went into that tavern, saw this guy, and created a scene. If she had not done that, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. Sean Reed would probably be in jail for something related to stalking her, and somebody would not have gotten hurt or spent the night in jail or whatever for getting into a fight. And they wouldn't have done damage to the guy's bar. All right. All of this could have been avoided if she'd have just taken the good, solid advice. But we have a lot of simps, a lot of white knights who think that women are entitled to be everywhere, do whatever they want, and there should be no consequences. I look at it and say, given all the information that we know from all of the witnesses, from Rachel Rose herself, from a bunch of other people, nobody ever said Rachel Rose did not start the fight. Everybody says she should have been protected. You need to protect women. Listen to victims. All this empty garbage, right? So that basically tells me you did go into the bar and you started a fight. Somebody else got hurt on your behalf, and you're going to skirt responsibility. And this poor guy probably got his face cut up, got hit in the face with a glass mug, and went to jail. And well, you get to be queen for a day on social media because you got stalked by some weirdo. This is terrible. Like, share, subscribe. I think I'll talk to you guys later.